Ons is vanoggend hier by Netelingshof net buitekant Stellenbosch om die eerste van 'n reeks Sake-ontbyte te doen. Dit is natuurlik EikestadNuus in samewerking met business partners op Stellenbosch. Ons spreker vanoggend is Clem Sunter wat natuurlik geen bekendstelling nodig het nie.
Clem, welcome. He's going to join us this morning. He's going to share with us the methodology in scenario planning, and then he's going to look at the international world and bring it down to South Africa. Clem, we can't wait. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to hopefully prove to you that an initiative like this is absolutely central to the future of South Africa, because the role of small enterprise is the only way we're actually going to create jobs that are necessary to create a socially harmonious society. So this is a very, very critical...
But nobody can relax. I mean, tourism is at risk. I mean, you just look at what happened in Tunisia. One guy went and killed 38 people on a beach. And for the time being, that's the end of tourism in Tunisia. Here in South Africa, the religious flag is down. I mean, we obviously argue over colour, but we don't argue over religion in this country. However, we cannot just be complacent about this flag, because we have a lot of foreign tourists here, and we have to protect the facilities which they visit, because they are an obvious target for terrorist groups. And equally, we've obviously got to try and maintain the level of religious tolerance, which has meant that the flag has remained down here in South Africa. The second flag that our overseas clients talk about is the red flag, and particularly in Europe and particularly in Germany. It's Mr. Putin and his annexation of Crimea. With that one act, he completely changed the prospects for Europe, because 5 years ago, people were talking about Russia becoming a member of the European Union. Now that talk is completely off the table. And it's been replaced by sanctions between Europe and America on the one hand and Russia on the other hand. It's certainly hurt the Russian economy. The ruble has declined. Russia is in a very tough state at the moment. America doesn't care, because America doesn't trade with Russia. But Germany, which is the critical economy in Europe, is Russia's largest trading partner. And a lot of German companies have physical businesses in Russia. And Angela Merkel speaks fluent Russian, because she comes from East Germany. So they have a very close relationship. And what has really surprised us is one of our German clients has said, would you please play political and military scenarios of what the outcomes of this flag are? And we're just gobsmacked that they're now beginning to think that this is all going to end up as a military conflict between NATO and Russia. But obviously, with all these planes flying over Syria, which are Russian, British, American, Saudi Arabia, all kinds of jets are flying over Syria, you might have a crash, and that could precipitate a conflict. And that's the whole point of a cloudy flag, is to say, how could this flag play out if something happens? That's where the scenarios come in.
The real point is that you've got to have inclusive leadership if you want to do well in the Premier League of Nations. It's the same with soccer. Manchester United won every cup on earth, more times than any other team on earth, when they had Alex Ferguson as their manager. When he quit, they've won nothing. Zero, zippo, nothing. I say this as a Chelsea fan. But even Mourinho made a mistake in the first game. He fired the female doctor for going on the field to sort of look after Eden Hazard. And I know from people inside the Chelsea dressing room that this has seriously divided the Chelsea squad. So I don't think they have any chance of repeating their victory in the Premier League this year. Here in South Africa, we had an inclusive leader in Nelson Mandela, and I was privileged to see him in jail because he'd read one of my books. And I had a five-hour one-on-one with the great man, and he blew me away with his spirit of reconciliation. And certainly I think that he showed that passion for reconciliation when he was president of the country. His 3 successors, one was for a short time, of course, Mr. McClunsky, haven't come close in terms of that. And so we're probably more divided as a nation now than we have been at any time since 1994. And it's worrying because you do not do well in the Premier League if you are a divided team. I do talks with Justice Malala, who I regard as one of the great commentators on the ANC. And he says, basically, we may have to wait for the next generation of leaders to get another really inclusive leader. We've got to get away from the struggle completely in order to have a really inclusive leadership. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm fine if you're uplifting the poor schools to be as good as the good schools, but what you must not do is dumb the good schools down. And of course, the other flag right now is what's going on at our universities in this country. And if it leads to quality of education declining at those universities, that could be a very, very bad flag for us. So it is an important one to watch, but on the whole, we do have lots of pockets of excellence. The last flag is probably the most important one of all, and it's why you're here this morning. We call it the entrepreneurial spark. We looked at what single thing changes the economic fortunes of a country the most. And it's not the kings and queens, it's not the generals, it's not the politicians, it's the entrepreneurs. When I do work in London, I say to the team that I'm facilitating, who made Great Britain great? And the invariable answer I get is Queen Victoria. And I say, no, she didn't. She was the consequence, because it was all those humble entrepreneurs who discovered the spinning jenny, the flying shuttle, the steam engine in the 1750s, which ushered in the Industrial Revolution, which made Britain the richest nation on earth by 1850, that allowed her to rule so regally. Americans know this. Americans know to stay #1 economy in the world, they've got to produce world-beating entrepreneurs in every generation. Like Henry Ford, who produced the first mass-produced car. Like Walt Disney, who produced the first cartoon. Bill Gates, who produced the first proper operating system for a PC. Steve Jobs, smartphones. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. And ironically, the person who has been voted the #1 entrepreneur in America right now by Forbes magazine is a South African who was educated at Pretoria Boys High, Elon Musk.
And suddenly something will happen and it will lead us. I don't know if you would want to say something about this, not only about the educational implications of what the students are doing, but I think as part of the poor class, now the middle class layer, and to what extent we now setting the scene for something unexpected.
Okay, I'll take this as the last question, and then I'll break that. Look,
I think it was a great initiative by EikestadNuus and business partners. And to have had a speaker of the caliber of Clem Sunter was particularly great and a very successful exercise. And I think the insights that we gained from this talk here today was very useful for the business people, because I really believe that the business people are actually, they're the backbone of our society. And here in Stellenbosch particularly, with the challenges we face, I look to businesses to play an extremely important part in all of this. And I think they have again been inspired by what they heard as far as concerned the local scene, but also the international scene, because as South Africans, we're also part of the international scene, and whatever happens elsewhere in the world will certainly have an effect on what we do locally. And from that perspective, Clem's global view, together with the South African scenario, put our business people in a very good space in order to read, as he called it today, the different flags on the horizon, and to respond in a very swift way like the fox, which is very much part of his theme, that they should respond in a foxy way. And I think this was great, it was useful, and I think we should have it more often and very regularly. Business people and all other sectors of society can only benefit from such initiatives, and we really want to applaud EikestadNuus with this initiative.